Hi, everyone. Welcome to this training on Don't Let Zoom Be Your Doom. This is to help you learn the basics and a little bit more about Zoom fails and how to avoid them. This is a training for Washington County Professional Development, and my name is Karen Carrier. This is my first ever training for the county, so I'm really excited to present to you all. The first thing I want to tell you just a little bit about myself. I'm a business and information technology teacher at John Battle. I have taught for 15 years. 10 of those were in Montgomery County, actually at a little school there called Eastern Montgomery High School. And this is actually going to be my 5th year at John Battle. I currently teach CIS, so Computer Information Systems, dual enrolled CIS, IT fundamentals, leadership, and yearbook. And I absolutely love all things technology. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I know that you're wondering why I'm an expert. Well, I think it's simple. My name is Karen. I hear those memes all the time, and I thought this was a funny one. The leading scientist was the expert in the 80s, the PhD student was the expert in the 90s, the media expert was appearing in the 2000s when I graduated high school. And now, of course, you see, I am the expert, and I like to ask for the manager at all times. That's me. All right, our agenda for the call today. We are going to first look at some Zoom basics, and then we are going to look at the 10 Zoom to Doom mistakes that I have come up with, just compiled a list there for you with some samples and videos. And then I wanted to show you a few of my Zoom fails, how I learned the hard way, and then I'm going to wrap up for you. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. I like this right here. It says teachers trying to keep up with virtual teaching, parent emails, virtual department meetings, virtual school wide meetings, their own children, and the coronavirus. If you felt like me this past spring, it was a little bit overwhelming. And many of us were just thrown right into this virtual training. And thankfully, I had had a little bit of a background in Zoom, being that I had used it with my business, and also I had used it a little bit with students for a yearbook and for FBLA. So I felt somewhat comfortable with it, but I had to learn a few things, and I know that some of you were just really overwhelmed. And so this training is supposed to help those of you who are beginners, who know a little bit, but just want to know a little bit more to become more comfortable with it. So, first, we're going to talk about the basics just for a few minutes. And I have 7 steps here to get you started. First, you need to find a well lit room or window that allows natural light in, and also try to find a room that has a door that closes. I think that we all probably experienced a pet or a child coming in on our Zoom calls and know what a frustration that can be. Number two is to elevate your computer or device to your eye level or even just above your eye level. You can use books, board games, anything that's going to give your computer monitor height. You can also, it's very important that you test your network, your webcam, your microphone, make sure everything is working before you start a Zoom call. And then you're going to go ahead and log in to zoom.us, or you can locate and install the app on your phone or tablet. Once you are logged into the Zoom website, you can go ahead and schedule your upcoming meeting or meetings. And then once you start to schedule it, you're going to see settings for video, whether you want it turned on or off, whether you want to mute or unmute. You can see settings for recording your videos and if you want to make it a recurring meeting or not, and then also how to add a password. And I'm going to show you all of that in just a few minutes. And then once you have your meeting scheduled, you want to go ahead and share that meeting, the link with the attendees, and you can email them or you can post it directly to your classroom, Schoology page, or your class remind. All right, here's a video to help you learn a little bit about the basics. All right, let's get started with Zoom. This is the first page that you're going to see when you type zoom.us into your URL. And then you are going to be logging in using your Google account that is attached to your school email. I've already logged in and I now have these options. I can join a meeting, that is currently in progress, I can host a meeting directly from this spot. Although I don't recommend that, I highly recommend going into my account and scheduling your meetings in advance, which is what I do. So if I click on the meetings tab here, then you can see I do have one recurring meeting that is happening here every Thursday at 9 o'clock. We were meeting every Tuesday and Thursday, and now we're down to once a week until we get this yearbook finished. This one was just a sample one that I was setting up earlier. So let's go in and let's schedule a new meeting together. And what we're going to do is go ahead and schedule the meeting that I have coming up for training. And that training is going to be in July. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and pretend that we are scheduling that meeting now. So the topic of that meeting, that training that I'm doing, is called Going Online. Engagement doesn't have to end. I hope that many of you will join me on that call. I know that the live part of the call fills up with 24 participants, but it is going to be recorded. So hopefully many of you will get to see that one as well. That's going to be happening on July 16th. So I'll go ahead and choose the correct date. And that's going to be at 2 o'clock. And I'll be teaching you lots of tips and tricks on how to have engaging Zoom calls, not just watching you on the video camera and hearing you lecture. It's all about getting your students engaged and interacting with one another and making your Zoom calls a little bit more fun. All right, so I'm going to leave that at an hour long, and the time zone is correct. It's not going to be a recurring meeting. I'm going to go ahead and leave the meeting ID to generate automatically, and then I'm going to make the password. Let's say I'm going to make that engaging, okay? And you do want to set a password. It's very important that you protect your meetings. You don't want to have any of those Zoom bombers come in. Yes, that is a thing. There are people that are always out there with the wrong intentions, and so we have had instances where uninvited guests have popped into a Zoom, and we definitely don't want to have that happen with any of our county Zoom meetings. So be careful and make sure you're setting passwords. I always make sure to have my host video on, my participant video on. I want as much interaction as possible. I also allow the students to join before me, although I always try to be on before them. I definitely want to mute them if I have a large class coming on or a large crowd. I sometimes don't mute them though when it's like my yearbook staff and I know that we're just going to be discussing things together. I let them have complete control over whether they want to mute themselves or not. But that's a great tool, and we'll talk just a little bit more about that later in one of my tips. And you can enable the waiting room. That's also a nice security control that allows you to allow one student at a time into your Zoom call. So there you're able to kind of screen them. And if you see that they're all part of your class, you can admit them all by clicking one button. The breakout room pre-assign is something that we'll talk a little bit more about on my live training in July, but that is something you can learn more about also in Zoom trainings. And you can go ahead and pre-assign those if you want. And you want to make sure that the record the meeting automatically on the local computer is checked. So when all that is checked, you're going to go ahead and click save, and you have now created a meeting. So it's not too hard. From that point, you can add it to any of your calendars. I do recommend, though, that when you're sharing this with your students or trainees, you want to make sure that you don't overload them. And so what I do is I typically click copy invitation, and then I just take the last few lines here, and that is what I copy and paste over to Classroom and over to Remind. I try to have that go out to students in two different places just so that they don't miss it. And I have a tip coming up on that later. So that's how I do that. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And one more thing I want to show you in here is the profile area. One thing I suggest you do is go ahead and change your profile picture. That's just it makes it a little more personable. I used a personalized Bitmoji here and put that there so that when I'm not on the actual video, so when my video is turned off, then this will show instead of just my name. And I think that's a little bit more fun and makes it just more relatable for the kids. Now, if you were to upgrade your account and you had a pro account, you would also see another button here, another tab called Reports. and that would make roll call a lot easier. But I do have a tip for that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click out of here and lead into the next part of this, which is going to be the biggest mistakes, the Zoom to do mistakes, the top 10 of those. So I'll see you there in just a moment. All right, I hope that that training helped you to get a little bit more familiar with the basics of Zoom and how to get started. And we are going to move on here to the next segment in this training, which is your Zoom to Doom mistakes. So, the first one that I want to tell you about is not muting. And that is a big one that we often find ourselves in trouble with. And we've got a lot of kids chatting at the same time, or we have muted ourselves by accident. So, just be sure that you become aware with how to mute or not mute yourself and your participants. So you need to mute your participants. And as a listener, it is very respectful that you mute. And as a teacher, it is necessary. And I think that we all probably learned that along the way as we were learning how to Zoom. My tips on this mistake is to number one, set your meeting to mute everyone upon entry. We saw that just a minute ago with my video. It is very important that you go ahead and set that if you want all of your kids to be muted when they enter the call. Secondly, there's a really cool trick that not a lot of people know right off the bat, and it's to use your space bar. So you can hit the space bar, and that will actually mute you. And if you press the space bar again, then it will unmute you. And that is just a really quick way to do that without having to go and click those button controls. And then, thirdly, a really neat shortcut is to press Alt plus M, and that is going to mute or unmute all of your attendees very quickly. So, as the hostess, you press Alt M, and that will allow you to mute everyone, and then you can press Alt M again to unmute everyone. So I hope that that trick helps you out a little bit. All right, moving on to our second. Oh, first, I want to show you a little example of that. So this is an example of why we must mute. So some of you may have seen this on the internet, but this is a great example that this teacher has created.
Hi, class. Long time no see. Or doing like all the Can you come congratulate us today? You guys so amazing lives. Sarah, so Happy New Year. Wow. Sarah, we heard everything you're saying. Hi, guys. Oh, the picture. Okay.
All right. I hope that you enjoyed seeing that clip. I know it made me laugh the first time I saw that because it definitely just reminded me of some of the Zooms I got to see with my daughters. My kindergartner had a few like that where it just seemed like all the kindergartners were wanting to talk at the same time. And so I thought that was really funny to see that clip. All right, so next we are going to talk about Zoom to do mistake number two, and that is the wrong location. So setting up your Zoom in the wrong place. You should, like I said before, choose a well-lit room. Your screen should be eye level, and I said ergonomics and double chins. Enough said. You know, it is better for your body to have the computer at eye level. It's better for your hands, your wrist, everything to be structured like that. And of course, we all know that if we're looking down at a camera, we all have double chins. And so that's terrible, and we want to try to avoid that if all possible. So, my tips in order to do that are to use a stack of books. And myself, I'm actually using a stack of board games. So, anything that you have that's sturdy that you can use to raise your laptop would be a good idea there. You might also consider using a phone tripod. So if it's a phone or a tablet and you want to use a tripod and you have one of those, that would also be a really good idea. So I made this for you just to show you. This was 6 different locations in my house. And I think that the first 2 are the best. Number 1 is outside. Number 2 is where I'm currently sitting, which is at a window. So I'm sitting in front of the window and the natural light is coming in. Number 3 is a very low light setting, so that's not a good idea. Number 4, I look like I've been in a self tanner. I have a really orange glow. That's because I'm standing right in front of a lamp, so that is not a good idea. Number 5, I'm also in front of a window, but I have too much light coming in, so I feel like my eyes are squinted. And then number 6 is not bad, but the window is behind me, so that can create kind of that glow effect, and so you don't want to go that route either. So I ended up choosing number 2 just because it was raining today. But I think outside is nice as long as the sound, as long as there's not a lot of background noise. And then as you can see here, this is actually where I'm sitting. This is a stack of board games to help me prop up my laptop to get that at my eye level. So hopefully that helps you choose the right location. All right, on to Zoom to do mistake number 3. Sometimes I feel like educators are making it too hard. I got a lot of emails, a lot of invites. We had Zoom links being thrown at us from all directions. And so I think that it's nice for you to just keep it simple. All that the user really needs is the link to the Zoom and the password. There may be times where you feel like you need to also share the meeting ID, but most students are clicking directly on a link and that opens the Zoom on their computer and then they can go in and type the password and join. So try not to make it too difficult. Don't worry about inviting every single attendee by email. I think that's just creating more work for you when it's not necessary. I also feel like when you add it to your calendar and then you share it through there, that sometimes people end up. I know there was an instance where I clicked on a Google Hangout instead of a Zoom link because both links were in the same email. So just be really careful not to overload your users. And so to do that, like I showed you before in the video, you just need to click copy invitation and then share only the link and password from there. And I personally like to post it in 2 different places. I think that some of my students weren't checking their email, and so I made sure to send it also to our class remind, just so that I could grab both students who were on their email and students who were looking at their phone and saw their reminds. All right, and then here's an example of those 2 posts. So this was a post from April 20th, and it says, "We're Zooming today at 11. This is a quick one. Be prepared to show your favorite quarantine photos." So you can see I provided the link and the password. The same message went out on our yearbook staff remind, and so you can see there just the topic, Design at 9, and the link, and actually the meeting ID was there and the password. So those are just 2 examples of how I personally invite my students to join into my calls. I know in the fall we may be using Schoology as well, and so I believe you could just copy and paste that into an announcement there as well. All right, number 4, we are now talking about Zoom to Doom mistake, not sharing your screen. I feel like we already get some yawns from our students, especially those of us that tried early calls, but I think that we're going to get even more yawns if we don't share our screen. You can lose the student's attention so quickly if you are not sharing something that correlates with what you're speaking about, what you're lecturing about. So make sure you're sharing and make sure you're using all the cool features that Zoom has to offer. So, number 1 is the whiteboard feature. Many of you discovered that when you were just playing around with Zoom and you realized what a really cool tool that was. And I have a video to show you briefly that. And then number 2 is to use a second camera. And many of you were able to bring home your document cameras or you had purchased a document camera. I even used an iPad that I had and used a device called an Osmo that was able to act as a projector. So that was a kind of a neat thing. But I recently figured out that you could use your phone. And so I have created tip number 5 for you to show you how you could use your phone kind of like a projector, like an Elmo. So that is really neat. So stay tuned for that. And then, thirdly, a tip that I have here is to share your entire desktop if you plan to switch between apps and browser tabs. I do that quite a bit when I'm on my calls. So, if you're going to do that a lot, make sure that you just share the entire desktop instead of selecting just one specific app. Okay, so here's a funny, this was shared on Facebook, I believe, and social media outlets, and I think we all got a good laugh. So this lady was standing in her bathtub and using her wall as her whiteboard. And I think that we all had to get a little creative during this time. And so kudos to her. But had she realized Zoom actually had a whiteboard feature, she may have not had to do that. So I'm going to show you how that is possible. All right, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to use the whiteboard feature, which is a really neat tool that is available in Zoom. It's actually not available in some of the other video conferencing apps, so this is an advantage of Zoom for sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to share screen, and this time we're going to choose whiteboard. And so you click to share your whiteboard. And from that point, you're going to see a selection of tools up here that you can use to help teach something to your students or meeting attendees. So first you can type. So if you draw and say, "Good morning, students," okay, that's going to appear on your whiteboard. You could use this for so many different reasons. I'm sure math teachers absolutely loved having this available. Any teacher that needs to brainstorm or draw out diagrams, you can draw lines, you can draw arrows, all kinds of different tools if you need them. Let's say you needed a box there, and let's say you needed a line over here. And then let's say you needed to move that line. You can actually come and select that and move that down to the bottom. You can add stamps if needed. So you're just going to add those wherever. Maybe some hearts. You can change the color of those on the Format tab. All right. And then you can use the Spotlight tool to help demonstrate whatever it is that you've written on the whiteboard that you want the students to pay close attention to. You can erase things that you need to erase. And you can also undo, redo, and then clear all of your drawings as well as all the viewers' drawings as well. So this is a great tool. When you're finished with the whiteboard, you can save that and it will save into the folder where your Zoom is saved as well. I hope the whiteboard helps you in your teaching endeavors. All right, so that was just a little look at the whiteboard. Another really cool feature with the whiteboard is that you can actually come down to the controls at the bottom of your Zoom meeting and you can click annotate. So if you're sharing your screen or if another student is sharing their screen, you can actually annotate on directly on what they're sharing and you can save that as well. So it's not just on the whiteboard that you get to use all those cool drawing tools. You can use those using the annotate feature as well. All right, moving on. We are halfway through. This is Zoom to Doom mistake number 5. And this one's a really cool one because this is something that probably not a lot of you realize you can do. Well, I guess that depends on if you've researched it at all. But if you utilize your phone, you can actually show anything on your phone and you can do that wirelessly. But this is going to allow you to use your phone's camera as a screen capturing, as a document camera. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. You can use your phone or tablet as long as you have a camera on that. You can connect your phone through the Wi-Fi to your Zoom. And I'm going to show you that. And like I said, it can be used like an Elmo. So let me get into that video to show you just how that is going to work. Hi, everyone. Just showing you how you can use your phone or an iPad as a second screen to use for a document viewer like an Elmo at your school if you don't have one of those available. So what I'm going to do is go into the share screen, and from there I'm going to choose iPhone or iPad and click share. And that's going to bring up a dialog box that basically tells us that we need to go in and make sure we're on the right Wi-Fi, and then we can go into screen mirroring, and from there we can choose the zoom. And so there you can basically see my screen now on my phone. So when I go into my phone settings, there you go. You can see everything on my phone. And I'm going to go ahead and click camera. And so now anything that I have in front of me is going to be treated just like an Elmo would if you were in school. So you can see I have last year's yearbook in front of me, and I'm going to open that up just so you can see how that would work if you were trying to show something to your students, you could do that directly from your phone without having any wires, any cables, any type of document viewer. All you would need is your phone or iPad. So that is really cool. And I hope that you enjoyed that tip because that is something that we don't often use, but something that we definitely could utilize if we are still needing to teach from home virtually or however that's going to play out for this fall. All right, so moving on to Zoom to do mistake number 6. This is an easy one. Some people don't realize this. I know it took me a while to figure this out, but not hiding your controls. There is a little um, feature that you can turn on and off, and I'm going to show you how to do that. When you are sharing your screen, you can actually hide those floating meeting controls, and that helps you just so that you don't accidentally click out of it. A lot of times you can end sharing by accident just because you're trying to click on an open browser tab. So what you're going to do is click the 3 dots and choose to hide floating meeting controls, and that will move them out of the way. So let me show you how that is done. It's a very quick process, and here it is. All right, I'm going to show you how you can share your screen and hide the floating meeting controls so that you are able to see a full screen. So if I were to share my screen, and let's say I wanted to share the tab that's open on Google Chrome, I can do that. And I'm going to go ahead and click share, and then notice these controls are there. So I could try to move them out of the way, but they're kind of in the way. So the easiest thing to do is to click the 3 dots on the more area, and you can come down to where it says hide floating meeting controls. If I click on that, now they've gone away, and I can press escape to bring them back, which I'm going to do now. So you can see escape brings them back, and now you've learned how to easily hide your floating meeting controls so that you can successfully share your screen without any disruptions. All right, hopefully that was a helpful tip. We're going to move on to the tip number 7, Zoom to Doom, mistake number 7, forgetting to record. This is another simple one, but one that we don't want to happen because we have our time is precious. And if someone is not able to be on that call, we want to be able to just go find the recording and share that with the student. Maybe you need to share it with an administrator, but we don't want to have to record that again. So let's make sure that we are recording and making sure that we actually choose the option to record when we're setting up the call. So record your Zooms, and that way you have a copy and you can share it with those who miss. And then our tips are to one, schedule when you're scheduling the call, choose to automatically record it. And then number 2, if you forget, you can always start recording while you are in Zoom. I've had to do that a few times. And then lastly, your files at the end of the call are going to convert. So it'll take just a few moments to convert. And then you can choose those. You can choose where you're going to save those. And so I typically just save those to my local computer, but I know that with the more advanced Zooms, the paid for Zooms, you can choose to have those be stored in the cloud and a few other options there as well. Okay, number 8. This is a very important one. You sometimes forget about sound, and we don't want to do that. And I have a funny video for you here. It is very important. And the one of the guys that I was watching and training for this said that users will stick with a bad video with good audio, but not the opposite. So if you have bad audio, it doesn't matter how good your video is, no one's going to listen to that. So that was it was interesting for me to see that. Okay, so my tips. First, you can use headphones. I'm currently using just basic iPhone headphones, and those are helpful to drown out the background noise, but you can also hear that I'm speaking into the microphone that hangs below the headphones. So if you don't have an external microphone that you can hook up, it is a good idea to use a headset so that you're speaking directly into that microphone. And then don't forget to check the box. This is such an important one, and one that I did not know when I was heading into Zoom for the first time. There's a tiny little box that says share computer sound, and that is so crucial to clicking that so that your students can hear what you want them to hear. So I have a couple videos to show you here. The first one is about the computer sound, clicking the box. The next tip that I want to share with you is about computer sound. This is something that we often forget, but it is very important. I have plugged a set of headphones in so that I can remind you how important it is to use headphones if you need to drown out the noise around you. This will help cut down on some of that volume when you are speaking and you're not on mute on your Zoom call. The other thing that this type of headphone provides is a microphone that is really close to your mouth. So if you don't have any other type of microphone, this is going to help you project your voice the best to your Zoom listeners. The other thing that is very important on Zoom calls that I had to learn the hard way is to share your computer sound when you're sharing your screen if you need the students to listen to the sound. I had to ask our school's ITRT, so shout out to Miss Daniel for giving me this easy answer and something that is so easy but often overlooked. When you go to share your screen, you have an option to share computer sound, and that is not checked by default. So when you go to share, for instance, I'm going to share this virtual graduation video that we made, and it's very important that I click the little box to share computer sound so that you can hear the full video on your side. You can also click the box to optimize screen sharing for the video clip. And so now when I share, you should be able to hear the sound on your side as well. So let me go ahead and play that for you.
Ooh, mountains, we gon' walk it out and mountains, and I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the way.
All right, hopefully you enjoyed hearing that. That was a video that Miss Brown from Battle and myself made for our graduates. I know that they really missed out on such a grand graduation that they were hoping for, but this was just a little something that we were able to do for them to kind of have in place of that. So maybe we could have a future training on how to do the drones and the Premiere Pro and pulling that all together. All right, this is another funny. This one is actually with my colleague, Miss Byers, and she's part of the Route 80 ladies. We were coming together for a little department meeting via Zoom, and Ms. Byers and I were the first ones on the call, and I think this was hilarious, so I wanted to share it with you. I think that you probably all had an experience like this. It just shows the importance of checking your microphones and checking your sound before the Zoom. In this instance, it was actually my fault, but I had connected an Alexa device to my computer and it was still connected. And so I was having some trouble hearing her, but it was because it was playing through the Alexa, but the Alexa wasn't turned on. And so you can see the funny that came from that. So the beginning of this video is terrible. Do not eat on a Zoom call because you look like this. And the sound of the wrappers.
I see Haley.
This was also Twin Day for Virtual Spirit Week.
Wait, I can't hear you. Now I may hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? I do now.
Weird. Mine's been really
Can you hear me
weird.
now? Can you hear? I'm not muted.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? But you can't hear me.
I can't hear you.
No, I'm not muted.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm sure you all have experienced that, and it was just really funny to see her. I mean, of course, it's being recorded because it is playing through my computer, but I can't hear it because it was through the Alexa. So I hope that gave you guys a good laugh. That is definitely an important tip. Sound is crucial, so make sure you test it out first. So on that same note, the Zoom to Doom mistake number 9, you knew it was going to be in the countdown here. Not being professional is a huge one, and so many people got caught mid-Zoom Zoom without pants and things like that. So make sure that you are dressing the part and acting the part. You do not want to get caught with no pants in front of your students. Some tips in order for you to follow, obviously, wear pants. But number one, try to set a schedule for yourself when you are in this virtual atmosphere. It's easy to kind of get caught up in your summer routine or just being at home with your kids and your pets, and you forget to actually set that routine. But when I set a routine, it helped me tremendously to be able to accomplish the things that I needed to accomplish with being a mom, being a wife, and of course, being a teacher full time. So set your schedule and work the schedule. Number two, make sure you eat or drink before the call, like you saw in the video. It just looks terrible. It sounds terrible. It's very unprofessional. So try to make sure you're not eating in front of your attendees. And then lastly, close the door if at all possible to avoid your family interruptions. I know I absolutely loved being home with my kids, but my little one would come in ever so often when I was not in a closed room, and she would say, hey mom, can I have a snack? Or, this is going on. And so it's really important to try to avoid that when you are teaching, to try to keep your students focused as much as possible, even though I'm sure they love seeing the little ones on there as well. All right, and so these are just a few pictures. I know you saw these floating. If you've been on the internet at all, you have seen these funny Zoom videos. The first one here is the lady who just totally forgot she was on her company Zoom and she went to the bathroom. And so that one was just on there for everyone to see. The second one was actually Superman's son, who is now a news reporter. And he was all dressed the part on the top half, but I guess he thought his pants would not be on the camera. And so he was wrong, and we all got a good laugh out of that. This lady here was very professional, and she was doing great on her call, but the man in her house was just running by, and he was also pantless. So try to avoid that. And then lastly, this one, who knows if it was fake or not. It was pretty funny though. These guys were also on a company call. And this guy said, okay, guys, I'll see you later. And then he got up and they were all like, oh no. He has no pants on. So those are pretty funny. Something to laugh about for sure, but definitely want to prevent that. I know we had other things happen in the county, just some yelling by accident, some kids running in, some dogs doing different things. And you definitely want to make sure that you are careful and professional at all times. All right, the last one, the last Zoom to Doom mistake is engagement ends. That is what we don't want to happen. It is very important that when you go online, engagement does not end. And that is actually what my next training is about. It's a live training, and that's on July 16th at 2 o'clock. And so I hope all 24 of those individuals that get to be on that have a great time interacting with each other. But that's going to be recorded, so you all that missed that opportunity can go back and watch us interact together and use some of the really cool tools that are available online to do so. So the best types of Zoom meetings are those where it's just not you talking. We want to see students speaking, sharing, and interacting together. And some of the tips in order to do that are to allow students to speak. Make sure that you don't just keep them on mute the whole time. They can raise their hand. You can choose them individually, one by one, to speak. And they can also use the chat feature to interact with each other. And another way that you can do that is to utilize breakout rooms. And that is something that I'm going to be teaching on my live training. You can also go onto the Zoom tutorials to learn more about that as well. And thirdly, there are lots of engaging tools out there like Nearpod, Kahoot, Quizzes, Flipgrid, HyperDocs, virtual coupons, so many different ways that you can involve your students and do some fun activities while they are on a Zoom. So that's what I'm going to be showing you in the live training. I hope to see many of you there. Here's an example of how you can have your students be engaged by sharing their screen. So this is one of my students, Mary Brewer. She was actually one of our valedictorians this past spring, and she is sharing her portfolio with the class. And she's actually earning some bonus coupons. I had a virtual auction where students earned coupons all throughout the virtual, the online uh, education, and they were able to redeem those coupons for some prizes. So here's Mary sharing her portfolio.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I can see it now. Hey,
Yeah.
awesome. All right, we'll look at it for just a minute. Nice. That's really
Thanks.
cute. All right, what all you got?
So I just did like this on my homepage and then linked to my personal and then my leadership.
You have 3 now. 3
Yeah.
portfolios. I love
Yeah.
it.
And then certifications.
That looks really nice.
Then resume and cover letter, which, yeah.
You got those
And-
attached to the drive, right?
Yeah. And then samples. I just did 3 samples from Word, PowerPoint, and Excel.
Okay.
And then just a little My Future thing.
That is awesome. That's going to be a sample that I show my kiddos, my future students. What do you think?
Sure.
All right, awesome. Thank you for sharing. Can you go back and make me the host again?
Yeah.
All right, and so that was
How do I
just
do
an
that?
example of how a student was able to share and interact with her peers. And so this one is another example. This is just kind of a sneak peek at what the engagement is going to be like on the live training on July 16th. This is part of Nearpod. I really love Nearpod. I highly encourage you to go and use the free Nearpod account and design some interactive lessons that you can use with your kids, with your students online. They usually get pretty excited about Time to Climb, so here is an example of them playing this game.
Got a chance to earn some more. And I've got everything open and it's not progressing. Oh, I think Time to Climb.
Time to climb. Ooh, fun game.
Ooh, I can get more coupons.
I love these
One-
games.
One last Time to Climb. Let's see. One time we did space, one time we did underwater. Let's do the Himalayas today. All right.
Yeah.
So you guys hop onto this. There's only 3 questions. You can earn 5 more tickets to bid with.
That's the penguin.
Whatever.
Where's the
All
koala?
right. Hop on. Time to
I will
climb.
always go as the penguin because the
One
penguin is
last
the best.
time. They're so
Yo, wait, is there a sloth?
There is a sloth, Logan. I am like 95% sure there's a sloth.
Where's it at? I need it.
Just keep scrolling. You'll find it eventually.
There's not a sloth, you lied.
I thought there was a sloth. Okay.
All right. 11 people are on. Is that everybody? Think so?
I'm the only koala here.
All right, let's start. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. Y'all are twinsies. Who's this one? What is this one? A llama? What is that?
Yes, it's a llama. It's my favorite animal.
Madison, that's so cute. All right, here we go. Question number 1. These are random because it's different classes mixed together. All right, what is the office program designed to take notes? Don't answer.
There's definitely not one of these that says note in it.
There's 2 that says no.
Oh, who's winning? Jack, 807. Emma, you're close though, 879. All right, next question. The answer was OneNote, which is not an advantage of becoming Microsoft certified. You haven't this? Which is not an advantage of becoming Microsoft certified.
Oh man, I don't know which one it is.
Jack's still winning, 1761.
Jack,
I'm
mess
just-
up, please.
Yeah, that one was too easy. You're not going to up your social media likes, but you will have the rest. And a purposeful collection of online sample student work and demonstrations that showcase learning progression, achievement, and evidence of what you can do is referred to as a or an. Which one? And
Brag
the winner
binder.
today
It's a brag binder. No!
Jack, I believe. 2566. Oh, no, Jack won.
Answer the last one slow.
Good job.
All right, and so that was an example of engagement, and the kids usually really enjoyed doing the collaboration and the time to climbs and the drawing and all the different parts of Nearpod. So definitely try that out if you haven't. All right, I'm going to wrap up the call with a few of my own personal Zoom fails. I hope that you enjoy these. I'm sure you had your own as well. The first one here is puppies and Zooms don't mix well. So we were so excited to be able to get a puppy during this quarantine, our little silver lab, Harley. But as you can see, she did not know how to behave on a Zoom call. She was trying to eat my ear. So that was just a funny fail. I didn't try that much more. Also, kids and Zooms don't mix well. These are my daughters, Grace and Faith, and they are precious. My oldest looks like she's picking her nose in the background. So just again, that's another disruption. You want to try to stay on focus as much as you can. And so that was just a Zoom fail when they would run in. This is another one that I think is hilarious. I don't even know what I was doing in this picture, but I had to go back through the recording and I realized that all of our facial expressions are recorded. So be careful and know that you are going to make some funny faces on Zoom. This one really shocked me when I saw this back in a recording. I honestly have no words. Not all kids want to be seen. I successfully had one student on the video out of this entire class that hopped on. I had some shoes, I had a forehead, I had a masked kid. So hopefully, I told him, hey, you're going to scare my kids if they walk by and see the camera. So we definitely need to set some standards for these Zoom calls, and these kids need to realize that we need to see their faces. And so I'm hoping that with the graded element, that we can actually give participation grades based on seeing their faces and seeing them involved in the call. This one is also funny. I was really hungry. It was a design call. We do designs at 9, and I was eating popcorn. So as you can see, the popcorn is falling out of my mouth, and that is so unprofessional. And I just think that one's a funny to show what not to do. And then this one's also a funny. I had covered up my webcam and just completely forgot to uncover the webcam for this call. And I talked for like 5 minutes, didn't even realize that my camera was still covered up. So I thought that was funny. To show you what not to do. And then this was probably the most embarrassing one that I had. I thought it would be fun one night. It was one of my staffers' birthdays, and I thought it would be fun to have them play Just Dance as a group. And there's a really cool app that you can get on your phones. It's the Just Dance remote control. And so if the host plays the dance room on their screen, then everyone who has a phone with that app can put in the code and they can play Just Dance with you. So they can actually follow along and get points. Well, I forgot to click the box that says share computer sound. So they could hear nothing. They could just see me dancing on the screen. And I think they might even be recording me. So definitely did not work out. That was a total Zoom fail. Fun idea, but hopefully, if you want to try that idea, you will remember to check the box with computer sound. So I was the only one dancing. Well, my two daughters were dancing with me. All right, and then this one's just to show that Zooms can be a lot of fun. There were a lot of smiles, a lot of happy emotions, a lot of sad emotions, but altogether, I would say that Zoom was very successful in helping us continue educating our students through these hard times. These are some of the resources that I used. And then lastly, I would love if you would go and evaluate this training. This was my first ever professional development training, and I hope that I can provide more in the future for Washington County. I thought this little comic was cute. It says, "Your meeting's over. You can relax your Zoom face now." So that's something that I know you can relate to. And then lastly, why do I feel compelled to wave at the end of Zoom calls? I've literally never walked out of a meeting room waving. So hopefully that one gives you a smile as well. All right, I've enjoyed this training. I've enjoyed getting to teach you a few of my tips and tricks with Zoom, and I look forward to teaching some of you live on July 16th with going online. Engagement doesn't have to end. Have a great day and have a great rest of your summer. I'll see some of you in the fall. Bye-bye.